involved in the project EDIFY Edu. I want to inform you that this session is recorded. So if you want to, you can switch on your camera. If you don't want to, you can switch off your camera. During the whole session, you are muted. If you have questions, you can post them in the chat and we will address them later when the talks are finished. Today's webinar will be attended by students and business professionals across the globe that are completing our massive open online course from EDIFY Edu. EDIFY Edu is a project co-funded by the European Union with 12 partners involved that span over 5 countries: Ireland, Greece, Italy, Finland, and Germany. Today's webinar is titled Promoting Digital Inclusion and Etiquette in the Workplace. And I'm really happy to welcome our 2 guests. The first one is Mr. Uwe Hehne. He is trainer at Train Instinct, is Insights MDI certified trainer and consultant for industry, trade, and service sectors with a master's degree in Anglo-American literature, German studies, philosophy, psychology. His experience as actor and also as director. Through sound experience, both as trainer, coach, and moderator, as well as on stage, he develops intensive relationships with the participants. His approaches are lively and practice-oriented. In this way, he refreshes and inspires managers and employees.
Let's hope so.
His motto today, or always, is to be creative and successful. You have to be willing to let go. So I'm excited to hear and learn more about that in a second. Our second speaker is Mr. Anastasios Konstantokopoulos. He is software engineer with a master's degree in software engineering and a bachelor's degree in computer science, bringing nearly a decade of experience in web development, e-commerce, digital educational platforms, and digital tools. Consistently focusing on the user throughout the development process to ensure an optimal experience and promote digital accessibility. Since 2014, he has contributed as an IT specialist to numerous national and European projects in the education and entrepreneurial sectors, with a particular emphasis on initiatives that promote new technologies in entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, digital inclusion, and lifelong learning. Welcome.
Hello and good morning to everyone.
The webinar will be broken into 2 sections. So the first section will be Mr. Hehne presenting the power of perception, around 20 to 30 minutes. And the second section is Mr. Konstantokopoulos presenting empowering connections, digital platforms, enhancing inclusivity. During the talks, your microphones will be switched off. As I already mentioned, when you are able or in the position to turn on your camera, then we would be happy that you do so. And after the 2 talks, there will be time for discussion and questions. During the talks, you can already put all kind of questions into the chat. So thanks for your attention, and I will directly hand over to Mr. Hehne.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning and a very warm welcome from my side as well, which is given even more by the fact that it's very cold where I am right now. So if I'm shivering, it's because of the temperature. And if I look suffering on you, it's because I'm not 100% fit. So I'm sorry if anything of the sickness I'm enduring conveys towards your side. Nevertheless, I felt and feel still very honored to be here and be part of this morning. And given the background promoting digital inclusion and etiquette in the workplace, I really hardly asked myself what I could contribute. And I came up with a title that you already heard, and then I'll show you for at least a couple of seconds. No, that's it. Here we go. And I called it the power of perception, which I think, and that is the main point, is something that contradicts what you're trying to do when you start promoting new ideas, whatever they are, in the workplace. There has been a cruel history in humankind that every new idea has to fight for its right to be established towards a broader community. And equity, diversity, inclusion, I think, are important ideas that struggle with the same thing. If I say struggle, you got to understand where I'm coming from. My field is human interaction, and working as a trainer in the last, or I have been working as a trainer for the last 25 years. I have been trained as an actor before that and worked in the field of theater. So I'm looking down and back on, let's say, something around 40 years of watching people, how they interact, and what impact or what effect behavior has on other people. And that's exactly what I was thinking of when I got this contract to be with you this morning. Because guess what? No matter how good an idea is, no matter what you want to achieve with it, no matter what are the backgrounds of this new idea and the benefits, of course, there's always the complex human being. And as you know, this is the most used metaphor for this in the world. There's always the complexity, so to speak, of human beings that we have to deal with. And we are subdivided as beings in the conscious part or rational part, the main part of our personality, because that is what we constantly feel. And it relies on a much huger, a larger subconscious part that builds up our personality. And that's exactly, I think, why we have to keep in mind that every new idea has not only to be accepted by anyone through the rational way, but also has to be accepted on the emotional and personal level of a personality. Coming from there, as I said, the idea that you mentioned that you're working with, equity, diversity, and inclusion, they all are in juxtaposition to what our personality is actually made of. It's differentiation, it's standards that we live according to. And of course, it's self-sufficiency. We want to provide for ourselves. So on the rational, conscious part, it might be possible for each and every one of us to get down to the point where we say, yeah, that's a good idea. I can accept that. But that doesn't mean that automatically our whole personality is following that new idea, because what's standing against it, the cultural bias or bigotry, so to speak, that is working against it, comes from a much more subconscious and irrational part that builds up our personality. And that's exactly, I think, what we have to deal with when we're trying to promote new ideas. I was thinking and searching for some kind of example that I could bring in today. And I found one, and I want to show it to you just for a couple of seconds, or at least it's only 3 minutes, I guess, so I think we can watch it. And it comes from the field of the Me Too debate. You probably heard about that. So equity, how we deal with each other concerning men and women, for example, it's a positive idea to tell people or say people that let's keep each other equal. So equality is the main point, but most of us are not at that point because there are biases. And to give you an impression, I think this is very nice and very good to have a first look on. I hope you can see that. And I hope you can hear it. Let me know if not.
Be a lady, they said. Your skirt is too short. Your shirt is too low. Don't show so much skin. Cover up. Leave something to the imagination. Don't be a temptress. Men can't control themselves. Men have needs. Look sexy. Look hot. Don't be so provocative. You're asking for it. Wear black. Wear heels. You're too dressed up. You're too dressed down. You look like you've let yourself go. Be a lady, they said. Don't be too fat. Don't be too thin. Eat up. Slim down. Stop eating so much. Order a salad. Don't eat carbs. Skip dessert. Go on a diet. God, you look like a skeleton. Why don't you just eat? You look emaciated. You look sick. Men like women with some meat on their bones. Be a size 0. Be a double 0. Be nothing. Be less than nothing. Be a lady, they said. Remove your body hair. Bleach this, bleach that. Eradicate your scars. Cover your stretch marks. Plump your lips. Botox your wrinkles. Lift your face. Tuck your tummy. Perk up your boobs. Look natural. You're trying too hard. You look overdone. Men don't like girls who try too hard. Be a lady, they said. Wear makeup. Highlight your cheekbones. Line your lids. Fill in your brows. Lengthen your lashes. Color your lips. Powder, blush, bronze, highlight. Your hair is too short. Dye your hair, not blue. That looks unnatural. Look young. Old is ugly. Men don't like ugly. Be a lady, they said. Save yourself. Be pure. Don't be a whore. Don't sleep around. Men don't like sluts. Don't be a prude. Don't be so uptight. And smile more. Pleasure men. Be experienced. Be sexual. Be innocent. Be dirty. Be the cool girl. Don't be like the other girls. Be a lady, they said. Don't talk too loud. Don't talk too much. Don't be intimidating. Why are you so miserable? Don't be a bitch. Don't be so bossy. Don't be so emotional. Don't cry. Don't yell. Don't swear. Endure the pain. Don't complain. Fold his clothes. Cook his dinner. Keep him happy. That's a woman's job. You'll make a good wife someday. Take his last name. You hyphenated your name? Crazy feminist. Give him children. You don't want children? You will someday. He'll change your mind. Be a lady, they said. Don't get raped. Don't drink too much. Don't walk alone. Don't go out too late. Don't dress like that. Don't get drunk. Don't smile at strangers. Don't go out at night. Don't trust anyone. Don't say yes. Don't say no. Just be a lady, they said.
Yeah, it's probably worth letting this stand for a couple of seconds, but that's exactly what I'm trying to convey. There is always a bias, a cognitive bias we know about if we have no idea that is worth fighting for. And we have personalities that, by their values, by their standards, by their attitudes, have something to mention against it. And to work towards the good idea is really a process and a part of work. It's not where I wanted to go, sorry. I wanted to show you this again. Here we go. If we come from something like this, I think it's crucial to understand
Be a lady, they said.
I'm sorry, what the background for this is. And one of the backgrounds is that we live in a very exhausting world at the moment, called the VUCA world under most circumstances. Given an acronym for what is most pertinent today in the situation we live in. And there is an increased volatility, so we're going to extremes, concern the weather, for example. There's an increased amount of uncertainty, so we cannot rely on things. There's an increased amount of complexity, which is not very good for human beings because we're not made to deal with complex circumstances. And there's an increase in ambiguity in the world out there. So we cannot really go for what we did in the background because it's all ambiguous. We can't rely on anything. What people would need here is a clear vision and a true understanding of what's in the background, for example, a clarity of what we're trying to do, and an agility in moving forward so that even the errors or the tryouts that we need to get into any progress are worthful. Nevertheless, another background is that we're dealing with human beings, as I mentioned in the beginning, and the human being is much more complex as we usually think. What we know, in fact, so far is that below the surface, there are so many emotions, there are so many values, there's so much culture, experiences, expectations, self-image, etc., everything that builds up our personality. On the upper level, the rational level, the conscious level that we live on, there's the sensual things, the rational things, the measurable things, the visual behavior that we're confronted with. There's usually some kind of ratio between these two levels of a personality. But when we really look down into it, what we are aware of, if we try to compare that with what we know subconsciously or understand subconsciously, then we come to a comparison that goes down to 1.5 centimeters to 12 on the subconscious level. Now, if you would have to estimate, if this 1.5 centimeters would be your awareness, how much or how long would be the trail to compare with this. If we want to understand how huge, how big our subconscious part is, think about that for a couple of seconds. How much would you agree on? Is it 1 meter, 10 meters, 100 meters? Is it even more? I already showed you the number, which is a 12. And we're coming from 1.5 centimeters of awareness compared to 12 kilometers of subconsciousness. So there's a lot going on underneath the surface. And much of this might contradict or go against, not rationally, not consciously, but subconsciously, against any good idea that we're trying to convey. What made me understand these even better is a picture. And one metaphor, one picture for this subconscious level of personality is the so-called intrinsical archive. So think of yourself as coming to Earth with 12 kilometers of space that you fill with your personal experience. So it's like a big shelf, what we're made of. And in this shelf, we store everything, memories, whatever matters that was minting or embossing us, that gave us the rules for the world, the language that we learned first, the values that we learned, all the rituals that we sucked in, how we deal with people, what's correct, what's not correct, what's the status of a person, what's the value of a person, etc. There are, of course, some religious aspects, there are judgments in the background, there are assumptions in the background. All of this has an impact, and so on this. So this shelf is rather huge. And what we're trying to do, if we come from the conscious part, accepting or establishing a new idea, is fighting against the other ideas that are stored inside us that might contradict whatever we try to establish. And if we start talking about it, it doesn't become any better in the beginning, because now we have two complex systems working on each other. And there are even additional impacts in that one. But what we know so far is that if you say something, you're not hitting the brain of the opposite person at first. Like icebergs, we collide on the lower level first. And that means that whatever we say is first and forever guided along the 12 kilometers of our inner archive, comparing what we hear and what we get new with what we already knew or know, and what we rely on as a personality. And that happens before we can rationally think about it. So the ratio, our brain, comes in second, not first. The first thing that we guide new information along is whatever we already think and whatever our personality is made of. And if we give an answer, it's the same game. We hit on the other side, not on the rational level, but usually on the emotional, on the personal level. And again, whatever we say or whatever we answer is compared with what is known on the other side before it reacts or hits the second brain. You all know that. I don't think that is new to you guys, but nevertheless, we should also mention, and you knew that too, that of course there can be troubles occurring in that connection, in this butterfly effect of interhuman communication. And what we need to do, what we need to establish in order to get where we want, is some kind of bridge between the individuals that stick to the idea and want to promote it any further. Now, coming from here, we're always talking about the two-level communication if we're talking about new ideas. And be aware of the fact that whatever is in the background of the other person, whoever you are dealing with, he or she has her own ideas, her own backgrounds, her own values, her own attitude towards whatever you're trying to promote. To be more scientific and to give you one scientific view on this, we come from perception to reaction, first by observation. So what we can see, what we can perceive is then evaluated, but not in our rational brain, but in our subconscious belly brain, so to speak, in the values that make up our personality. Only then are we able to send it to our brain, where the real interpretation is formed after we've evaluated any new idea that enters our system. And after the interpretation, what follows is the behavior that we find fitting or right according to the situation that we're in. Another aspect, and I don't want to leave that out, although we are slowly coming towards the end of this. Another aspect is that we are naturally ambiguous. We think that what we say and what we try to convey is unanimous or can be understood right by every person that is listening. And I don't think that's true. If you really look on what human beings understand, you get some very interesting examples. For example, look for a couple of seconds at this picture. And no matter what, it depends on where you come from in the world and what part of your brain is more awake at the moment, what you see first when you look at this. Some of you might have seen the black monkey in the middle. And some of you might immediately have seen, even before the monkey, the white cat kind of jumping in from the left side. And there are even people out there, just to let you know, that see even more in this picture. Some people see, and I hope you can see that, on the right side, some kind of face with shifted eyes, of course, but they see a human or female, in most cases, face at this point. That's how different our vision is and how different we see things and process things inside. Mostly what we can realize is what we recognize with our subconscious system. And if you look at this, of course, you see someone playing an instrument. Maybe you see the face of a woman again. Some people in the world see in this picture the little hobbit smoking his pipe in Middle-earth. And the small black spot in front of his nose is the first puff of smoke that came out of the pipe. I would have never seen that, but there are people out there who can see that in this picture. The question is, what do you see and what do others see? And if we give, especially from the level of expertise that we usually have, some kind of shortened or abbreviated perspective, people might not see the whole picture. They see something like what you see right now. And maybe you can realize what this picture depicts. Maybe you know what it is already. Most people don't. They see some strange landscape, or they see some strange white figure, sometimes with two faces. What they definitely don't see is this, that this is only the part of a bigger picture. And that in fact, if we add up the rest of it, we might be able to see that this is a cow looking at us, that this is the nose, these are the eyes, and the black spots to left and right of the head are actually the ears that are pricked towards us. It's hard to realize the complete picture, but that is the task if you want to establish a new idea. And the problem in all of this, to give you the background again, is that we all look at the so-called world, and what we think we see is the average reality, okay? The truth of the world. And this belief has never been true, because everything we're confronted with is influenced by something I learned to call perceptual filters. And our experiences are one of the biggest perceptual filter we have. The expectations that follow out of experience are a big perceptual filter. Our stress level, and the world is under stress at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, those are all perceptual filters, habits, backgrounds, what we learned, the values that make us up, etc. So there is no reality that we all can rely on. There's only an individual reality that the power of perception constitutes for us and thereby gives us the backgrounds to understand the world. And all this is backed by some kind of identity, usually the cultural identity that we bring along. The sources for communication errors should be clear at this point. There are either non-satisfied expectations, and they can be very subconsciously. Not everybody could talk about those non-satisfied expectations if they occur. Or there might be some misunderstandings. That's rather a rational thing, so usually it's possible to talk about this. But nevertheless, the few people that might not correspond to your idea and that appear very difficult to establish something new are usually not really difficult. Most times we might realize if we go on a meta perspective, if we look from the upper side and not from the quarrel, that there is some trigger or some lack of intention in the behavior or something going wrong that switch the people that we're talking to into fight or flight mode. And so they get pressure from what we're trying to apply to them. And the usual reaction, the normal, the natural reaction on this is counter pressure. So people are acting out of their personality. Most part of the personality is subconscious. There can be counter pressure to new ideas, and we, if we have to promote them, have to deal with this. With the rational level, the data and facts that we bring along, but also with the emotional level, with the contradicting values, cultures, feelings, moods, attitudes in the background. Coming from there, we need to establish some kind of trust and some kind of vision, remember, to give people the right tools, the right backgrounds to move forward towards the direction that we want them to go. To fight for this would be wrong because it creates what Václavic called psychological fog between the two heads that are trying to establish the same idea or same aspects of one idea. Now, if we act careless at this point, and if you understood what I tried to convey so far, it usually ends in some kind of blind perspective on the situation, one that leads people to a thinking that makes them rather think about how to impress in the situation, how to look good in the circumstances of any change, and how to avoid mistakes. This is what Carol S. Dweck, a famous scientist from America, once called the static mindset. And the static mindset, as the name says, is not really able to develop into a different direction. And we have to develop if we want to accept new aspects and new things, because it's a change that we go through from being content, that's the upper left part of this picture, from being satisfied with our backgrounds, from knowing what we know, to a denial if there's something new coming across, to confusion if we deal with this new thing and really want to establish it. And then finally, we can renew whatever we wanted to do different from the beginning. And then in the end, we land up again in some comfort zone. So we're in the contentment room again. But on the way, we can lose people who cannot stop denying. We might lose people who find the idea confusing and therefore take the wrong direction or fall into the paralysis pit. And only those who are really eager to establish the same idea that we bring along will follow us without any hesitation towards the new established ideas. So what we go for, and what I would highly recommend, is that you work for an alternative perspective on the whole situation. One that doesn't work with a static mindset, but one that does ask the right questions, like how can I repair? How do I deal with mistakes throughout the process? What goals can we agree on that must be reached? And what role do I and does everybody have in this process? This Carol S. Dweck once called a dynamic mindset. And it's not only the source, the primary background to establish new ideas, it's also a continuous work throughout the process of change. So what we need is to look at it, to check it, and to exercise whatever we want to establish in a new field. Looking at the time, I think the 20 minutes you finally got me are more or less over. So let me wrap this up. Coming from the human part of intercommunication and looking at this for a very long time, whatever new ideas we're trying to promote in the world will be contradicted by the values and the backgrounds that are subconscious in each and every woman, each and every person that we're trying to hit, trying to reach. If we care about that, we keep a dynamic mindset and we try to establish it throughout the people that we're working with. If we don't know about this, we will continuously fight for the new idea. And if things go wrong, we will lose the idea and will not be able to change into the correct direction. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you for your valuable insights, also in human perception, human psychology. And I will directly hand over to Mr. Konstantakopoulos. And after this presentation, we will have time for questions and discussion. If you already have topics in mind or questions in mind, just want to remind you, you can write them in the chat.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you also for the invitation for being a speaker also in this webinar. So I will begin with my presentation. It will be a short presentation followed up by showing some small examples. One moment. Okay. So the subject we will talk about together today is about empowering connections, digital platforms, enhancing inclusivity. As mentioned earlier, I'm Anastasios Konstantakopoulos, and I'm the director of the IT department at P Consulting. We are a consulting company based in Patras, in Greece. Apart from consulting services, we have an expertise in developing websites, e-learning platforms, community platforms, and generally digital tools. We participate in multiple European projects, mostly Erasmus+. So in almost each project, we have to develop things like that, like a website, a platform for learning, or other digital tools. So to begin, why digital inclusivity matters? Digital inclusivity provides equal access to online tools and learning resources for all individuals, regardless of their abilities, their backgrounds, or locations. Inclusive design widens the participation, allowing diverse voices and perspectives to contribute, learn, and succeed together. By removing barriers, we empower people from all walks of life to engage meaningfully in collaborative and educational environments. Inclusive digital spaces foster innovation, empathy, and stronger communities, bridging gaps and building lasting connections. Ultimately, digital inclusivity transforms online platforms into spaces where everyone can thrive and grow. A very important aspect is the web accessibility. This is basically comprised by two parts. The well-known web content accessibility guidelines, which is an international standard, and it can be measured and quantified by using specific tools that you can find freely online, like a checker or Wave or other similar tools. So it checks our platform as for the code part of the platform, but also for other important aspects like contrast or containing specific text for images and videos that can help users understand better certain aspects. And the other important part is giving to the user specific tools and features like screen reader compatibility, the ability to navigate through the keyboard, through the buttons and pages of the platform, the ability to contain alternative text for images so that you can explain better what is depicted in an image. Providing closed captioning and transcripts if you have videos in your platform, and also to provide options for adjustable contrast and font sizes. so that people with problems with vision can be helped to access the content of the platform. Then we have the open source and free tools used for inclusivity purposes. So why open source and free tools matter? Because they help a lot by being affordable, pretty much very customizable, and also they provide community-driven innovation, because tools that are used by large communities are very helpful from a lot of aspects. Now, combining tools for enhanced collaboration. Combining tools within e-learning platforms, for example, enhances inclusivity and user engagement. For example, if we combine a learning management system with a community platform for gaining feedback and the engagement of the users, and if we integrate together the option to have Zoom sessions online by an organizer, it would be optimal. Also, we could include tools that facilitate the implementation of Netget. I believe that you have probably mentioned this term in previous webinars. It actually refers to the online code of conduct that exists for platforms. So in the next step, we will see how important it is to foster a respectful environment for the user. It is very good to define the online code of conduct that we mentioned earlier. So what the user can do and shouldn't do. So it should be very specific and described inside the terms and conditions of the platform, which the users will agree during the sign-up process. Then it's very useful, of course, to assign administrators that will do the monitoring of the platform and ensure that everything works as it should, and that the users interact with each other in a proper way. But of course, it's not always possible to have someone online to do that 24 hours a day. So it's also useful to use tools to assist in this process. Like, let's say, a profanity filter to avoid use of bad language, or to include a spam filter to avoid spam from users or bots that automatically try to do things like that. Or to use content reporting, which actually refers to giving the option to the user to block or to report specific content that he or she believes that is not appropriate. Next here, we see the data privacy and security as inclusivity factors. Again, respecting user data and ensuring privacy is a foundational aspect of inclusivity. The user must feel comfortable and well informed about how his or her data are used and shared. Because when users feel secure, they are more willing to engage and collaborate openly. Generally, platforms that comply with GDPR or offer privacy controls, such as consent for data sharing, provide a safe space for users, contributing to a trustworthy learning environment. continuous improvement and user feedback integration. As we said earlier, it's useful to to include a community or questionnaires or things like that in order to collect and act on user feedback. So by integrating these tools together with the learning systems, in this way, organizations can keep improving their inclusivity features and make adjustments based on real user needs. So it's very important to listen to the user and make adjustments. So this was the short presentation, and now I will proceed with some examples. I will share again my screen. So here's an example of a website and platform. Here we can see the accessibility tool used. From here, the users can change the contrast of the page in different ways. They have the option to highlight links.
Anastasia, sorry to interrupt, but since
Yes.
I'm one of your colleagues today, people can't see whatever you're trying to share.
Sorry.
I saw in the
Sorry.
chat other people who can't see it too.
Thank you. Thank you. Let
Well,
me try again. Can it be seen now or still not?
Unfortunately, not.
No. Give me 1 second.
we should all cheer for Anastasia. This is the worst thing that can happen online.
Yes, yes, indeed. Maybe now?
I'm sorry to say no.
Still no. Okay.
Is it something freely accessible? Now we can see it.
You can see it now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So here we have the accessibility tool in this certain website and platform. And as I said earlier, the user can change several things, like the contrast of the web page, to highlight links, to change the font size, make them bigger, more readable, to increase the text spacing, to pause animations if they don't want to see such animations and they confuse them. They can choose to hide the images and keep just text. Change the font to something more visible. And have several more options. Then to go to the sign-up process, here we can see all the fields that each user must complete during registration. And here we can see the important part I mentioned earlier, to have very concise terms of service for the platform, so that the user knows everything about it. And also very concise privacy policy with details about how the user's data are used by the platform, the organization, how they are shared, if they are shared with any third party members. So to move on to the signing process. Okay. So in this specific platform, the user can go and check the profile. Here we can see the specific fields shown. And if the user goes to edit, he or she has the option to choose which field they want to be public or not. So if they don't want to show something specific, it's very important to have the option to hide it. So if they click to change for each specific field, they can choose public, only available for members, only available for their connections, or to keep it only for themselves, which is a very important feature, I think. Another thing that I mentioned earlier, I will move to the community part. Here we have the discussions. So about the content and the ability of the user to report something. So if they see a post or a message or a notification that they consider as not appropriate, they can report it. And after that, it depends on the settings set by the administrator. For example, if it is set after two people report a specific content, it is automatically hidden until it is later reviewed by the administrator to ensure that it was inappropriate and ban it, let's say. It also contains a tool that we mentioned earlier to avoid the use of bad words. So that was all from here. Let me show you one last thing. Here's also an example of a training platform with specific modules and also the same tools that we mentioned earlier. Also accessibility is applied here. And we can see the modules, topics, quizzes, and everything like that. Also here in the community part, we have the option that I mentioned earlier, where the organizer can can create a Zoom session to participate with students, which is also very useful. So one moment. So from each group, each organizer that is, let's say, something like an administrator for this group, can go to the to the Zoom tab, create his own meeting, and join there with the students. And also this meeting is recorded and uploaded at a later time, so that it is available for all users to see again. And that was about it. I hope it was useful for everyone. And thank you very much again for your attention.
Thank you for these beautiful insights, and I think the two talks are really um, good combining each other, because on the one hand you have the tools you can use and which are already existing to make learning platforms, websites more accessible to everyone, and on the other hand you have the mindset you need to change to implement these kind of tools. I find it really, really interesting. So thank you for your inputs. And now time is nearly up, but I want to give the audience the opportunity to, ask questions if there are any, or comment, give ideas. Is it possible to get the PowerPoint presentations? As this webinar is also recorded, it will be uploaded, but I think it's also possible somehow to get the PowerPoint presentations.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, if there's no question or comment left, I think we can conclude the webinar. I would like to thank you again for your insights. I found it really, really interesting, as I already said, to have on the one hand, to think about your own perception and your mindset, and on the other hand, to see what already exists and what tools we could already use. So I hope this was not only for me inspiring, but for all of us. Thank you, and hopefully until the next time. I think next week will also be a webinar for all of the participants of the Massive Open Online course. Yeah. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.